In this lesson, we're going to talk about two time-saving things, the linear feature pattern and the circular feature pattern. Now, we've talked a little bit already about patterning inside of a sketch, but you can also pattern features themselves. This can often be more efficient than trying to accomplish way too much inside of one sketch. Let's take a quick look at an example. We're going to sketch on this face by right-clicking it and selecting Activate 2D Sketch. And let's just make something kind of interesting. We'll just make a hexagon. We'll start here, we'll click to end, we'll press apply, and then we'll close. And we're not too worried about dimensions and stuff like that right now. So let's go ahead and cut this out, and everything looks fine. And so now let's pretend that we wanted this to be, all across the space. Well, we could use a linear pattern for that. And the first thing that we'll do is select a feature to pattern. So we can either select it here, right, when this dialog is up. The cursor is now in feature selection mode instead of face selection mode. So you'll notice when you hover over a face, lots of things get selected typically. And that's to represent the whole feature associated with that face. So in this case, the extrusion face here is selecting all the extruded faces. So let's go ahead and select that. And we can also select it directly from the Design Explorer if we like. Now we need to set a direction. So the direction can be either an axis, in this case, or it can be an edge. And it can be anything, right? It can be the edge that's part of this cut, or it can be something on the model. But in this case, we want it to be the left and right. So let's go ahead and select that. And we'll set our spacing maybe to 1 just to kind of get a grip on what's going on. And we see that we don't see anything. So what's probably happening here is the first instance of this pattern is probably over here. And it means we need to change the direction. And there we go. So now that we have that set up, we can increase or decrease the spacing or the count. And we can also set a second path if we like. And so let's do that. We'll select the input. We'll choose another edge, or in this case, why don't we choose an axis? We'll set a spacing of same 0.8, instances of more than 1, and we can see we're starting to get somewhere. So let's go ahead and set this instant count up, and we'll increase the spacing to 0.75 and press OK. And it's that simple. So this is kind of a contrived example, but it does show how you can input specific features, and you can pattern in one or more directions using either a linear edge or an axis as an input to those. The next example we'll show is of a circular feature pattern. And in this case, we want to create some pretty interesting geometry that would be really hard to do by hand or within a sketch. To finish this part, we're going to need to create 2 circular patterns, primarily because the count of them will be different. Let's select circular pattern. And the first thing we'll do is select this hole and its chamfer. Now we want to select the center point. The center point can be an axis, or it can be a circular face. And this is a trick that many people aren't aware of, but if you select a circular face, it's going to automatically determine the axis of where that axis would be, even if you don't see it. So it's a really handy trick. If this part were off in space and it wasn't around a convenient axis, well, you could still find the axis just by selecting the face. And we can see that we're getting our pattern count. Now in this case, we want 5 instances. And we can see that we get a failure here. And that's because the way that we've selected this is to be at an angle. So let's take it back down to 4 and see what's going on. We have 4 instances at 90 degrees. And so 90, 90, 90. And if we were to add a 5th one, it's going to be right on top of this guy. So that's not going to work. Either we need to change the value down here. For example, if we did 45 degrees, we could add a 5th one. But what we really want to do is just divide the whole circle by however many number we have. And so let's use this option to do that, the equal angle option. And now we can kind of pretty freely add or subtract them as we like. So we're going to add 5 here, and we're going to press OK. And then the next thing we're going to do is create a series of fins along the edge. So we're going to go to circular pattern again. We're going to go in here and select this cut, or we can just go right onto the Design Explorer. Let's select it from here. We're going to choose our center point. In this case, we'll use an axis. And now we want to really ratchet this up, maybe 60. And make sure that we change our angle to equal angle. And we can still keep going if we like, maybe 120. And we'll take it all the way up to 180. Now, this is a fairly simple feature to pattern, but keep in mind that if you're trying to pattern, 1,800 instances of this, or anything bigger than maybe 100 or 200, you're probably going to start to run into some significant lag. And so you may want to end up using another tool to do that, which we'll talk about in a later lesson. But when you get to that point, at that point, you're going to start thinking about topology patterns. So just be aware topology patterns exist. And if you're starting to create really aggressive feature patterns, a topology pattern might be a better way to go. Anyway, that concludes our lesson on linear feature patterns and circular feature patterns.